All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. We're going to give ourselves just a few minutes here to let people hop in from the waiting rooms and have the attendee count start jumping up. I see we got people from all over, and that's filling up quite fast, so that's awesome. All right, we'll just give it a couple seconds and put on our best smiling faces while people hop in. If you need a second to grab a drink of water or fix your headphones, now's the time to do so. But we're super glad that you could join us tonight. I'll go ahead and get things kicked off. My name is Jake Dietrich. I'm Assistant Director of Admissions in the Office of Admissions here at Syracuse University. I'm joined by my colleagues Rachel, Stephanie, and Francesco, who I'll have introduce themselves in order in just a second. But tonight, we're focusing on business and technology. And what we're going to do is run you through a couple different programs here that tie into these fields and give you a better sense of how you can pursue these types of careers here at Syracuse University. But before that, I'll start off with just a couple quick minutes of Syracuse 101, if you will, in case we need a refresher, in case there's things that you'd like to get caught up on prior to learning more specific information. But just to start us off, as I said, I'm Jake Dietrich and I work in the Office of Admissions. Rachel and then Steph and then Francesco, would you mind introducing yourselves?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Rachel Dubois, Director of Undergraduate Recruitment in the Whitman School of Management. Excited to share some more information with you in just a few minutes.
Hi everybody, I'm Stephanie Warden. I'm the Assistant Director of Undergraduate Recruitment at the iSchool, or the School of Information Studies. And some of you might be thinking that this is a virtual background, but it is not. I am in a real classroom on campus, and I'm happy to talk about that when we get there. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Francesco Reverso. I work in Falk College in the Department of Sport Management. I'm internship coordinator for the sport management program and a program manager for the sport analytics major. So looking forward to sharing some information with you all today.
Great, thank you so much. All right, everyone, we're so glad that you could join us tonight. As I promised earlier, I want to start off just talking a little bit about Syracuse. This will just take 5 minutes of your time. If you're unfamiliar with who we are, we're an institution, private college in upstate New York, in Syracuse, New York, which is where we get the name from, presumably, of about 15,000 undergraduate students. So the way I like to highlight that is, 15,000 is kind of the Goldilocks zone of colleges in terms of student size, where our average class size is only 26 and the student to faculty ratio is just 15:1. And so what you end up with is this really tiny day-to-day experience where you're gonna be able to get to know your professors and your peers a little bit better and develop these really meaningful relationships. But at the same time, you'll have the resources that come with a larger research institution. And I think the benefit of that is that you have, to use a metaphor, the sea in front of you, but you don't feel lost at sea. You're gonna have an abundance of things available and different ways of pursuing and tackling different problems that are of interest to you, but you will never feel out of place or never feel like it's a struggle to get connected to these things. And I think that's a really important resource because there's very little point in having a lot of resources if we're not doing the work to connect students to them. And I think that's something that Syracuse does very, very well across our 10 undergraduate schools and colleges. Now, as I said, 15,000 students, average class size of 26. Each of our 10 undergraduate schools and colleges has a couple different majors within each of them, totaling 200 or so total and over 100 minors. So there's lots of different things that you can study here and a lot of flexibility between programs as well. While students, when they apply, are accepted into one of these 10 schools and colleges, I don't want you to get the impression that you're stuck in one spot your whole time here, right? When you apply to Syracuse, there's a lot of ways to mess around with those 200 majors or so and try out different things. For starters, every student's going to have a liberal arts core curriculum and take classes in math, science, history, English, electives, any number of different things to make sure that you're getting a solid foundation in a variety of different fields. At the same time, if you have a couple different interests, you're able to add on majors or minors in different programs and schools here as well. A lot of students in our journalism school, for example, will add a minor on in a foreign language because they want to work in international journalism or know how important speaking a second or third language can be in that type of field. A lot of architecture students add minors on in business because they understand the importance of that there as well. And so you see students get really creative with their different types of academic interests that they pursue. And you see them get very collaborative with their peers as well. We have a lot of really strong entrepreneurial programs or competitions and spaces where you can work with people who came here to do something entirely different than you might be doing And yet between the two of you or more, you collaborate to create something really wonderful and a completely new approach to an academic space. You see that in our research, you see that in our entrepreneurship, you see it in a variety of different spaces on campus. And so I think just to end my slides and my point here in the beginning on a quick summary, when you think of Syracuse, I want you to think of a mid-sized institution where you're going to be able to develop meaningful relationships and approach your college experience in a really personalized way, but still have the flexibility and the freedoms that come with a larger institution to pursue things in a way that you feel comfortable with. So without further ado, I'm going to turn us over to Rachel, who will talk just a little bit about the Martin Whitman School of Management.
Awesome. Thank you, Jake. That's a good overview of the university and options, and I think it's so cool that we are able to talk about different programs tonight all together, and so you can just get an idea for what your options are. And one option on campus is the Whitman School of Management, which is where I work, and you can see here on the screen we have 8 different major options. And so when you apply on the Common App, and if you select the Whitman School as a choice that you want to apply to, you'll be prompted to select one of these areas if you have one that you are leaning towards. You will also have the option to select undecided if you're totally undecided but know you want a business education. And then you can come in and take classes in many of these areas and then really hone in on what your major or multiple majors will be. So you actually have 2 years once you're in the Whitman School to officially declare your major. And a lot of our students actually choose 2 of these majors listed on the screen. So it's pretty easy to fit within our curriculum 2 of these 8 and not adding too much onto your coursework onto your degree. And so that's something that we advise students, if it makes sense for you, if you really like 2 areas, or maybe discover that you love real estate in your first year or second year, then you might as well add that on for a double major in the Whitman School. So you can see these eight majors. They're pretty self-explanatory. The only thing that I'll clarify, a lot of people say, what's the difference between management and marketing management? And so management is our business management major, the most broad-based business major that we offer. So it's going to look kind of broadly at a company and looking at how to successfully lead a company, how to compete in a specific industry, how to manage human resources of a company, whereas marketing management will dive much deeper into the specifics of marketing, communications, advertising, and looking at how to sell products or services or whatever the case may be. So that's just one thing I'll clarify. And if you could go on to the next slide, Jake. So in addition to these 8 majors that you saw, we also have 3 dual enrollment programs. And so the lingo here gets a little bit confusing, but a dual program on campus at Syracuse is when you apply to a specific program with 2 different schools. And so we have 3 of those, and the first is with the Whitman School and Arts and Sciences in Maxwell. We have science, math, and international relations as options for that. So you essentially study in 2 different of the individual schools that Jake mentioned. You're doing, the entire major in each school, the entire core curriculum. So it's a great opportunity to pair 2 unique things together rather than just studying business alone. The second dual program is with the iSchool, which Stephanie will talk a lot more about in just a moment. And the third dual program is with the Newhouse School of Communications for one of their communications majors and 1 business major. So some common options there are broadcast journalism, advertising, just to give you a couple of examples, as well as a whole business major. So if interested, you'll want to make sure to apply directly to that dual program. And then the third thing you see, which is a unique option we have, is a business and law accelerated program, which I already saw we had a question come in from. So I'm glad that you are already interested in that. And that's a great way to study business and law in a condensed format. If you know you want to pursue law school immediately after your bachelor's degree, you can do so in an accelerated way. And so if you apply to Whitman and you, on your application, you'll want to select pre-law as an interest. There's a section for a professional interest. And the combination of that could get you a conditional admission into that track. And then that way, you're right on the track and you just need to follow certain requirements. Then you could continue on for the second 3 years at Syracuse in the law school, which is right on campus, a beautiful building, just a couple of years old. So a nice opportunity there. I just want to mention we have something called the Goodman Impress program in Whitman, which is something that we created to ensure that our students are prepared for the real world and prepared for internships with all of the professional skills that employers are looking for. And so there's this program to teach these skills and build these skills, but also some community building. So to hopefully not confuse you, there's 4 houses or teams, they're not physical houses, Adams, Harrison, Marshall, and Waverly, so kind of Harry Potter style. You are assigned to one of these 4 houses, and the houses compete each year to win the Goodman Cup. And students are acquiring points all year long by attending speaker series or going to different workshops to practice interviewing or networking, connecting with alumni or some of our corporate partners, and just doing things to build those skills while also competing against the other houses. So there's a fun celebration for the winning house. A few other things that our students do outside of the classroom, we really think it's important to provide opportunities to apply what you would be learning in the classroom to things outside of the classroom. Of course, internships. So all of the programs, you'll hear about this evening incorporate, most students will do internships. We require an internship to graduate, and a lot of students will do multiple through the years, but that's something that is really important. We think business students need to complete an internship to get a feel for a specific industry and learn whether or not you might want to pursue that when you graduate. And a lot of internships in a typical traditional economy tend to lead to a job offer. So that's always exciting for us to see. And students are doing internships everywhere. So whether it's in the New York City region or in California, it's really up to you. And we have a whole career center to work with you on that internship search process. We also have a community engagement component where we want our students to get involved in some type of nonprofit, either locally in Syracuse or something at home, to continue that habit of giving back that we really value. So that's something that students generally enjoy, being able to step away from classes and get off campus and volunteer. We also have lots of awesome study abroad options. Typically junior year is when our students will study abroad. It's built into our curriculum. And we did offer this spring a new New York City abroad semester where students were interning in New York and taking some classes there. So we're excited to hopefully expand on that in future years. And then I want to just briefly mention something called the Orange Value Fund. If you're interested in finance at all, this is an awesome opportunity to gain real world investing experience. So we have juniors and seniors, about 20 of them, who get involved in managing about a $4.5 million fund. And so they apply in the sophomore year, and then if admitted into the program, they spend most of their days together with a professor taking classes and learning about investing that money. So an awesome opportunity to gain that experience early on. And then Jake spoke about entrepreneurship. I think you'll find if you come to visit at some point in the future or continue doing these virtual sessions, entrepreneurship is really important and consistent across campus in all the different programs. And we have a hub right in our building on the first floor. There's many others across campus where students can seek guidance and free resources and advice for starting a business or just where to go with an idea. So we really value that. I don't want to talk too much more because I know we've got lots of other stuff to cover, but I'm happy to answer your questions at the end of our session. So I'll turn it back to Jake now. Thank you.
All right, perfect. My video took a second to start back up there. I'm sorry about that. But I'm actually going to hand this over to Steph. Thanks so much to Rachel. And we're going to move on to the iSchool portion of the evening now. So without any further ado.
Thanks, Jake. Yeah, so hi, everybody. Again, my name is Stephanie Warden. I'm the Assistant Director of Undergraduate Recruitment at the School of Information Studies, or the iSchool. And because we have some more guests than when I introduced myself, I will share this is not a virtual background. This is a real classroom on the Syracuse University campus in Hines Hall. And I can show you a little bit more about that in a second. So I'm here to talk about the iSchool, which I'm sure a lot of you are saying, what is that? And what does that have to do with business and technology? And so I'm gonna give you a couple of examples to kind of understand that and show you how they connect to all the presenters today. So on the screen, you see Netflix. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Netflix and maybe too familiar in times of pandemic, watching a lot of Netflix. I certainly am one of those people. And so I'd like you to think about, is Netflix a technology company? Is Netflix an entertainment company? Or is Netflix a data company? And I would argue that Netflix is all three of those things. And a lot of businesses are moving in this direction. So at the iSchool, we are people that love technology. And what do I mean by that? So we are not the builders of tools. Those are engineers. We love engineers. They build roads, bridges, highways, software, all that stuff. And we are the kind of student that says, okay, cool. What data and information do all these tools collect? And then how do we make business decisions with that data and information, depending on what it is? So in this Netflix example, I'll kind of take you through how this works. So I'm sure you log into Netflix, right? Someone designed that. Someone has to think about how you log in. You want security. Why do you want security? You want security from a consumer perspective because you don't want your information all over the internet, or more likely your parents are probably paying for your Netflix account, so you don't want your parents' information everywhere. But as a business, you want your operation to be secure, right? For a lot of different reasons. So you log in and it probably says, for me, it says Stephanie. So I click on my little profile, and then on that screen are all these recommendations about all this content. So an iSchool student will do a lot of things with that. An iSchool student will look at, how do you design that interface? How do we get people to click on that content more? Not only that, we're gonna take all the data of my viewing behavior. For example, I'm into the Great British Baking Show these days. So I'll click on that and then I'll get more cooking show recommendations based on my viewer behavior. So that enables me, the goal is to keep me engaged as a customer or a consumer of Netflix, right? So then I finish watching the show. Sometimes I get an ad on my Facebook or Instagram, right? And sometimes I get a lot of different information depending on what my viewer behavior is. So that's sort of one way. So an iSchool student will think about all of those elements. They'll think about security. They'll think about, one thing I didn't talk about, this happens to me a lot lately because I have slow internet these days at my home. So, you know that little red circle when it buffers, and you just, that one part won't load at your show. We care about the internet. We care about how fast the internet is, how it works, what's the difference between a Wi-Fi network and a landline, why does my cell phone work differently than my computer? So all these elements. So an iSchool student can focus on each one of those things. They can focus on the analytics, the security, the networking, the design to inform business decisions. So this is totally related to all of the things that Rachel talked about, because how do businesses make decisions? I'm sure you can imagine they use data and information to do that. And our students are the ones curating, understanding, organizing, sharing, and securing all that data. So what we have is one major, and you can see right here, we have a Bachelor of Science in Information Management and Technology. One major, organized a little bit different than the Whitman School, and that we're gonna have you pick this one major, and you're gonna learn a little about everything. And then you'll say, oh, Steph, didn't like project management, but I really liked data analytics. So then we'll ask you to pick a concentration within your major. So it's not additional credits, it's a focus within the major. And this is really important because information technology exists in everything. So I used Netflix as an example. Let's call that entertainment. But you're gonna have to make decisions in nonprofits, in psychology, in sports, which we'll talk about later, higher education, every sector. Actually, I'll pose this to all of you. If you can name a business or industry that doesn't utilize and leverage technology, you can email me and I'll send you a prize. I guarantee that. There's 60 of you in here, 59 of you in here. Let me repeat the question. If you can name a business and or industry that doesn't utilize and leverage technology and you stump me, I can't make a connection, I will send you a prize. And so that's the point of the iSchool, that we're here to use data and information to make decisions. Those could be business decisions, but those could also be like, I'm sure you're familiar with public health these days. How do we track and trace COVID? That is all data and information. So there's lots of different applications. Students can major and minor in different ways as well. So you can major in the iSchool and then maybe minor in math or music or philosophy or economics or communications. Technology is in everything. And so our school is going to deliver that to you. So another way to kind of describe the iSchool is that our students are the intermediaries between the business entity and the developer or the coder in some instances. So someone builds a tool, and then what do we do with the tool? That's what an iSchool student will think about. And then how do we make decisions from that? So if you think about what those meetings and collaborations might look like, it's that someone that understands the nuts and bolts, and then you need a translator to say, this is why a decision should be made. And so it's a really cool way to pair something you're really interested in with a real professional skill set. So our students go and work in all different industries, which I'll get to that in a second. But as Rachel mentioned, we offer a dual degree program, which I think she described beautifully. And we have a dual degree with the Newhouse School of Public Communications, because if you think about how we communicate, it's all technology these days, literally right now via this virtual platform, but how we consume news and information. We have a class that does social media data mining, particularly for political candidates, which is cool. We offer a special topics class every election year following the data that the data from the election that it produces. Not just the election, but campaigns. Super fascinating. Simultaneously, we have a dual degree program with the Whitman School of Management, and you can choose any major in Whitman and pair that. Now I will share, dual degrees are competitive and they have more credits to achieve by the time you graduate. And I'm happy to answer more questions about that in the chat. Rachel and I are happy to do that. They're wonderful, rich programs that if you have an interest in both, make a lot of sense for you. So moving on, a lot of students are saying, okay, Stephanie, I kind of get what you mean when you talk about Netflix and making decisions with data, but like, what do you do? Like, what's a job? Like, it's really easy to say, when you go to medical school, you become a doctor. When you go to business school, you enter business. When you go to iSchool, that path is not so linear for students. And so I like this little representation of the cell phone. Those are companies that all of our students have gone to work at. Amazon, the little heart is Southwest, JP Morgan. So banking, if you're interested in finance, banking is really cool. Technology and money go together. How we trade money on the Dow and the NASDAQ, that's all a giant database. We have classes on cryptocurrencies. The most famous one you might be aware of is Bitcoin. We have consumer classes in finance. So if you're interested in like building apps like Venmo and how we trade money, we talk all about that stuff. Our students go in the consulting field. Those are like Deloitte, KPMG, places like that. Government. Clearly, there's technology in government all sorts of ways. How we apply for things, how we share information, public health, great example. Uber, Facebook, Wayfair, YouTube, Snapchat, all of these are places that iSchool students go. And so I'm really happy to report that at the iSchool, we have one of the highest average starting salaries, which you can see here on this slide, and one of the highest placement rates. Even during the pandemic, our students were still getting jobs. And I'll leave you with one last example that I think is really cool before we move on to something really interesting in sports, is that here's two student examples. We have a student graduating. Her name is Maeve. She's going to work for Amazon in Seattle. She actually just texted me her plane ticket and she's off to live in Seattle. And her job is to take businesses that are brick and mortar or maybe just online on not like a large platform and transition them to the Amazon marketplace. That's her job. One major in the iSchool, digital retail strategies concentration. The year prior, we had a student, his name is Chris Komicki, also went to Amazon, minored in computer science, and is a full stack developer coding for Amazon. So one major, two different students, same company, two very different jobs. So the flexibility, the opportunity to get cool and interesting jobs in different sectors is something that the iSchool can offer. So I'll leave it there. I'm happy to answer questions, and I'm going to transition it back to our host, Jake, who can introduce our next speaker. So thank you all.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Steph. And I'm glad to see that a couple questions have been coming in. Please keep them coming. If you think of anything, general admissions practices or specific to any of our individual schools and colleges, we'd love to take some time towards the end of this, and we've set it aside to just answer a few questions that pop into the Q&A, so don't be a stranger there. But without any further ado, let me hand this over to Francesco, who can take us into the wide world of sports management and sports analytics.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Jake. And I will try to give you a little bit of background in both programs. Full disclosure, while my other fellow panelists are specifically working in admissions, my role is a little bit different in the department. I work predominantly on the career development academic side. So in working with sport management, kind of managing the internship experiential pieces, and for sport analytics, kind of an overall program management side of things. So I'll take them one by one and try to give a little bit more insight into each. So sport management, to start, is a really broad-based program. You can see on your screen that it explores all aspects of the sport industry in a very professionally focused program. I think the major tenet that you would hear our faculty talk about is that experience is important as you look to move on post-grad. So we drill that home really early on in a lot of our classes, where we're really using a lot of theory to practice in the classroom setting. So a lot of group-based projects, a lot of interacting with the sport world. So bringing in speakers and organizations to run real life scenarios within our classes. So that what that looks like could be a number of different things. A lot of our students will come in with the goal of potentially being a general manager for a franchise in Major League Baseball, in the NFL, and NHL, whatever it might be. And that's a great goal. There are very few of those jobs, so you have to find your own path to get there. And what our program can do is help you get there. So you'll take classes in sales, in marketing, in economics. And I think on the next slide, you'll see a little bit more of that. But it's really designed to explore what the sport industry will look like. And similar to what Stephanie had said, kind of figure out what is your correct path, right? Maybe it's the sales route, maybe it's the marketing route, maybe it's the technology route within sport, maybe it's communications. It could be any number of different things. So you'll take classes in all of those areas and you can kind of design your own path. And there's lots of opportunities experientially in the Syracuse area that we are connected with to get our students that practical experience that goes with what they're doing in the classroom. Kind of the ultimate culmination that all of that leads up to is what you'll see in the second bullet under sport management. All of our students in the sport management program are required to do a full semester internship at a sport team, league, organization, entity, agency, and that is what's essentially going to catapult you into the industry. What we do from an internship coordinator perspective is help you connect with those organizations, right? Find out where the synergies are with what you want to do and what kind of opportunities are out there, right? uh, it's not a placement service, so we can't actually just like place you with the New York Yankees, but we will bring the New York Yankees to campus and we will have them interview our students, right? That's an example of one, but there are plenty of other relationships that we have built. But this capstone program is basically the hallmark of where we're at, and we have really good success. I know Stephanie shared some placement rates. Our placement rate over the last 5 years is over 90% of students being placed in full-time jobs in grad school out of our sport management program. And a lot of that comes from the experiences that they're getting as an undergraduate student. So it's a really good way to get your foot in the door in the industry. And similar to what I think Rachel had said, internships lead to jobs. And, you know, from our capstone perspective, our placement rate out of capstone into a full-time position at that organization is over 50%. So something we're proud of, and it means that our students are going out and being competitive in the industry, which is a really, really good thing as part of their experience here. A little bit different from sport management is sport analytics. And if you look for this major at another school or college in the United States, you won't find it. So we're the only undergraduate sport analytics specific undergraduate major in the country. And our first matriculating class started in the fall of 2017. So our analytics program is fairly new, but comes off of a number of years of industry research where our faculty and our department chair went out, spoke with industry professionals and said, what's the next big thing? Where do we need to be to stay relevant? And you can see from the kind of offerings that the iSchool has, that analytics is a big piece of it. If anyone's ever seen the movie Moneyball or read the book, you know kind of where this leads. That's essentially what I guess the stereotypical analytics career would look like. Beyond that, there's lots of opportunities in analytics on the more business-driven side, so where you may not necessarily think about it, but thinking about sales and ticketing. You know, how much should I price season tickets? Should the Lakers charge more for a game when, you know, the Oklahoma City Thunder, or if the Golden State Warriors are in town? Like, what does that ticket price look like versus if a lower level team is joining or coming into the city? So our students are looking at those kinds of things. They're looking at performance data. They're looking at things as it relates to social media and the impact of athletes in social media, and a number of other areas, marketing, sponsorship. You know, how do you drive revenue for the industry? How do you bring value? And there's data out there, and I think the biggest growing sector from an analytics perspective in sports is definitely on the business side, because a lot more organizations are making those decisions for their organizations on the data that they've been able to collect. What separates sport analytics from sport management a little bit is their culminating piece. So where sport management has this one semester capstone, what the analytics students are doing is a 2-semester independent research thesis on a topic that they design and work with a faculty mentor on. So we don't tell you what you should be researching or what your thesis should be. We let you decide, and you go out and you do the research, get the data, put together the lit reviews, present your findings. And what we've found is in the industry, a lot of people who are looking to hire want to know what you're capable of from a data perspective from start to finish. So this is a project that you own, and it can range. So we had one student that graduated that looked at the impact of weather on how a baseball catcher frames pitches. We had another just this past year look at quantifying the effect of a NASCAR pit chief. So does that have an impact on how well that racer does in a particular race? So some really unique, interesting topics, and you know, kind of the sky's the limit in terms of what you could do as it relates to that. And if you go to the next slide, Jake, I can talk a little bit more about the classes. So here's just an idea of what some of the coursework would look like. So on the left-hand side where you see technology and sport, sport economics, sport communications, those are classes that are driven more towards the sport management side. So you're getting a smattering of a couple different areas. And on the right, where you'd see game theory and economic strategy, sport data analysis, that's going to be more on the analytics side. So there is some crossovers, like, so the sport economics class, for example, is a course that both majors take. And I should add that we also have while we have a major in sport management, we also have a minor in sport management. We have a major in sport analytics. We also have a minor in sport analytics. So our students are required to do a minor not necessarily outside the college, but outside of their major. So we'll have students that are majoring in sport management that will want to go more on the marketing side. So may minor in marketing in the school management. And students from sport analytics that might want to follow up with a math or an applied statistics minor. Something in economics is a very good synergy with some of the classes that they're taking. But similar to what I think Jake said at the outset, you can kind of help design your own curriculum, and there's advisors in the department that will help you do that to kind of fit what you want to get most out of the education at the time. So then at the bottom, you'll see some more recent careers. So, we have students that are coming out and going into full-time positions with professional organizations. The business analysts is a position that I know one of our sport management students actually got. He was an analytics minor, but did all of his internships and his capstone in analytics and ended up pursuing that professionally. We have people that are working for ESPN across the country for independent leagues and teams, Under Armour, Nike, the NBA. I spoke with one of our alumni today that works at the NHL. And one that's on the screen that I think is actually pretty interesting is you'll see that there's a Buffalo Bills analytics associate. We've sent one of our analytics students to the Buffalo Bills for a season-long internship each of the last 3 years. So we've got a really good relationship with professional organizations where our students can go and have these really immersive experiences and decide what they want to do and if that's the direction that they want to go for their career. So I know there'll be more time for questions later on, but hopefully that gave you at least a small overview of what we offer in the Department of Sport Management, and I look forward to answering any questions that might come up as we go forward. So Jake, I will kick it back to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And so our colleagues are going to join us all back on video and on screen here in just a second, but you won't be able to hear it, but a round of applause to all three of you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us and give this presentation and help dive into the specifics a little bit more than we might otherwise get to. I think this is a really useful program for a lot of reasons, and I appreciate you being here. So we want to move on to the question and answer part real quick and just talk a little bit, take a little bit of time rather to answer some of the questions you've asked throughout the session. I have a few of my own, but I will hold off on asking those until we get to the very end of things if there's still time. So actually the first question is from Jose, who says, when you apply to Syracuse, do you apply directly to the School of Business or to the school as a whole? And so I thought I would kick this off myself, just working in central admissions. When you apply to Syracuse, you don't have to have a major right off the bat for most programs. There are a few like sports analytics or sports management where you're going to want to apply directly into that program. But what we like to say is you have to have a college. You don't necessarily have to have a major. You have typically until the end of sophomore year to declare a major. So while you will be accepted, let's say, into the Martin Whitman School of Management, you don't necessarily have to choose what specific major you want to do within that program until the end of your sophomore year. And that's true for most of our programs here. There are a few exceptions, but if you're worried about a particular specific field, feel free to email us at orange@syr.edu and we can chat with you a little bit more about that too. Another great example of the more specific one is architecture, because architecture is the only major within the College of Architecture. So if you're accepted there, you know that's what you're going to be doing. All right, the second question we have here is from Michael, who asks, what's the difference between a business management education and a general business education? So I think we might point that towards Rachel, if you're all right.
Sure, thank you. So I think what you're asking is like majoring in business at a school versus majoring in supply chain management at Syracuse, for example. So the way that I see it, our program essentially is a general business education. So in the first 2 years, we have a core business curriculum that all of our students take, which includes 12 foundational business courses. So taking a general business education and then junior, senior year specializing in something. So I think in a sense it is a general business education, and then you get to hone in on 1 or 2 majors that you want to dive a little bit deeper into. Hopefully that answers your question, Michael.
Perfect, thank you. It's taking 2 or 3 clicks before my mic unmutes for some reason, so I'm sorry for that awkward second delay. Jack is going to ask our next question, which is, do Whitman or the iSchool have any courses in which they discuss e-commerce, and what's the opportunities to discuss e-commerce on campus? Is that something maybe Steph you'd like to?
Yeah, I can start and then Rachel can answer from the women perspective. So I think that's a great term. We don't even say e-commerce anymore at the iSchool because it's just commerce now, but I think that's great. So we actually have a concentration in the iSchool in coordination closely with the Whitman School called Digital Retail Strategies, which is looking at a lot of different factors regarding retail online. I mentioned previously one of our students, Maeve, did that and is working for Amazon. But we think about commerce in all different types of ways. So we have classes on marketing for like a sales kind of position. We have classes about how monetizing web and technology tools. We have classes on building websites, particularly for not just retail, but products and services. We have what's called human computer interaction, which is looking at how human beings use technology and designing applications for that purpose. So like one example you might think about is, I don't know if you use Instagram a lot, but I certainly do, but that shop now button was that whole thing was designed to drive commerce because Instagram is owned by Facebook and they need to figure out how to do direct sales through there, but it involved designing from a technology standpoint on how to monetize that tool. So the answer is yes. And then even the background of sales, like what happens when you place that order? How does the company know you need to ship it? And what was the right item and all that stuff? Now, the theory of that and how that works, you'll probably find in the business school, but the tools to deliver are developed in the iSchool. So that's how I would answer that. I hope that answers your question. If not, you're free to email me.
Sure. And Rachel, did you want to chime into that too, or are we mostly okay?
Stephanie covered it. We do have a couple of classes and partner with the iSchool on that. So I think that would do it.
Perfect, thanks. Actually, the next question, I'd like to direct this towards Francesca, if you're all right with that. I know we all talked about this at various points of the night, I think, the role of experiential learning and experience in an undergraduate academic space and how professionalism is blended into that. But something that was hit on a little bit too, but if Francesca, if you could elaborate a little bit more on this within sports management and analytics specifically, it's just the idea of networking and connecting to opportunities, how that process or how to navigate that process, what that looks like specific to Falk and their programs.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely have networking as one of our core principles that we're teaching. One of the classes actually that I teach and my fellow internship coordinators teach is a 1-credit professional development course that's required of all students in both majors. So what it is an opportunity to develop your personal and professional kind of brand. So we focus on networking. We have a very specific LinkedIn session. We work on professional interviewing, mock interviewing. And when we do that, we actually bring in sport industry professionals to conduct those interviews. So they're doing a mock interview, they're getting the benefit out of learning like proper interview skills, but they're also having this experience with someone who could potentially hire them. So we're doing that on a semesterly basis. And we're also, I would say at least 8 to 10 times a semester, bringing professional organizations to campus for info sessions to talk about what they do, who they are, and get students in front of them. The other, I guess, really important networking opportunity that we have is our sport management program has an advisory board that is made up of kind of a who's who in the industry. So a lot of people know who, I'm sure everyone knows who Michael Jordan is, but Michael Jordan's agent is David Falk, who is the namesake of our college. And David is usually on campus at least once a semester, meeting with students. Mike Tirico is on our advisory board, so he is here every semester. So students have the opportunity to interact with these kind of titans of industry. So they're building networking that way. So you have it on a more granular level where they're doing it in the departments and with our local organizations, but then across the country with teams and leagues that will come here, and even people who are really, really well known across the country and across the world. I hope that addresses it.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
And to cut back to Steph, if that's all right, I saw that you had one you flagged down yourself and commented on actually, so I wanted to put that out there. Asking, is the ranching industry one of the ones that doesn't use internet to their advantage, in your opinion?
Yeah, so I love that question, Jose. Way to challenge me. But I would say ranching uses a ton of technology, including entrepreneurship. So that would work with both Whitman and the iSchool. Here's a couple examples. One, GIS mapping. Where are those cattle going? What are they eating? And what are they doing when they're there? Then there's technology to think. I grew up from a farm, so I kind of am a little more versed on this. Weight, distribution, sales, marketing, all of that. And if you think about what happened to our food system during COVID, tracking all of that, the breakdown of our supply chain. If you want to learn supply chain, you should talk to Rachel. If you want to learn how to use that technology to indicate that there's a problem, that would be an iSchool student. So I encourage you, I don't even know how I know this, to look up, if you're interested in that, Texas A&M won an entrepreneurship prize, a student there for, it's called Cattle Inc. And they were mapping the life cycle and all the data surrounding cattle from pre-birth, because they're, breeding and all that. If you want to learn about that, you want to talk about bioengineering, through the distribution sales phase and butchering and all that stuff. And then if you want to get into that too, we can talk about the technology involved in slaughterhouses and things. So I would say farming is one industry that has been transformed by technology, and you will see more and more of it. But I appreciate you challenging me. That's a very good way to think critically. We love critical thinkers at Syracuse. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think thinking outside the box is a key element of being a good Syracuse student, no matter what your program or major is, for sure. And maybe not too far out the box. We've got to make sure we're all staying academic and focused too. But Rachel, if you don't mind, I have a couple questions I'd like to direct your way. The first is just a quick, what is the Whitman job placement rate?
Yeah, I apologize for not mentioning this when I first talked. So thank you, Victoria, for bringing this back up. The placement rate for our last year's graduating class of 2019, was 91%. And that's typically about where we fall, above 90% each year. And the median base salary last year was $60,000. So we're still waiting for this class's stats, but last year's was 91%. So thank you.
Perfect, thanks. And I'll just throw the second one your way, as that one I know is a little faster, but we had two students ask about this actually. I'm just curious as to what a potential path forward might be for somebody interested in human resources here at Syracuse University.
Yeah, that's a great question. I know some schools do have a human resources major, but it is somewhat incorporated into all of our majors. And so every student is required to take one human resources class. But if that is really where you're planning to be for a postgraduate job, I would recommend our general management major, which is going to be, like I said, as close as it gets to a business administration, management, and it's going to have a couple of additional classes into human resources. And so that's a nice option for students to pursue human resources or anything related to business. It's like I said, a broad major that's going to just prepare you well to work on the business side of a company, and especially working with employees and human resources.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I don't know why I repeated so much there, but I guess just lots of thanks to go around. There's a couple other questions that I'd like to hit on. I know we have just a few minutes left, so I want to give our audience just a quick, warning, flag, hello. If you have any questions that you're still typing away and haven't worded properly or the way you want to just yet, feel free to throw them in the Q&A and we'll be sure to address them in the time that we have left or in the remaining minutes here. So this one may be a little bit more for both Stephanie and Rachel, I suppose, but Jose asks, can the digital retailing class be combined as a minor with a management major?
I'll let Rachel answer as well, because Rachel has a background in advising, so I'm going to answer from a larger point of view, but let me clarify. So at the iSchool, our major is information management and technology, and then you have to choose a concentration, which is digital retail strategies, and that concentration shares coursework with the Whitman School of Management. So it's within the iSchool, but you could also take some similar classes within the business school. So I hope that makes sense. It's an iSchool major with a focus in digital retail, and there's some shared courses within that. I hope that makes sense. Rachel, is that accurate from your perspective?
Yes, it is. The only exception which I've seen in the past, and I would have to check to see if this is still possible. We used to have some retail management students who would add on the concentration without being a major in the iSchool. So they would take the retail classes and then also I think it's a few iSchool classes on top of that. I haven't seen that done with the management major, but if you're interested in retail and digital retail and e-commerce, the retail management major and something in the iSchool, whether it's a concentration or a minor or the dual program combining both, is a really, really nice option to study retail. And not just, a lot of people when they think of retail management in terms of a business major, they're thinking, oh, it's in a fashion merchandising way, but it's really not. It absolutely can be paired very nicely with the iSchool to look into e-commerce. We've had students, go to Amazon or things like that, looking at the retail business and technology side.
Thank you.
And real quick, just to on that, because I think Rachel hit on a good point. For anyone interested in sports, business, technology, you can do majors and minors either way. Like you can major in the iSchool and minor in the Falk School. You can major in business and minor. And I think, Jose, I really love your creative thinking. And just because we're presenting on certain things doesn't mean you can't make really cool combinations. Of course, you have to apply to a specific school, just like Jake mentioned. But once you get here, you have access to take classes in different schools, and then you can decide where to minor later. So one thing about Syracuse that I love so much is that flexibility. In any school and college, you can really make cool combinations. So thank you. I just want to clarify that. Thank you for letting me jump in, Jake.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I was about to make the same point. So I guess great minds think alike. But in that same vein, I'd like to jump back to Francesco for a moment. I had a question just talking about the variety of programs and ability to have some flexibility in your academics, add on different majors and minors. I had a question that I wanted to couple with one that we've received anonymously in here. I know we talked about the importance of networking and the importance of professionalism. One student has asked us, can I do an internship as part of the sports analytics program? So maybe if there's a couple examples that pop into your head of cool internships students have had an opportunity to do. I know you gave a few earlier, but we'd love to hear a couple more great ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do encourage internships as part of the sport analytics program, similar to sport management. The benefit of data and using analytics to help organizations is you can do a lot from campus that you don't necessarily have to physically be at an organization. So one of the things that we have set up, and it's a pretty cool opportunity, in one of our sport data analysis classes that you take as a sophomore, we actually work with an external organization that the company's Edge 10 Group, and we work with data that they give us, so it's proprietary data. And our students will put together a project for that organization. They will present to the kind of the executives of the organization. Then they will do a follow-up project in the spring. And then students that do the best in the spring are put into an internship with that organization for the summer. So we have this kind of longitudinal experience with this one organization, but we have students that will go out every summer and intern in a number of different organizations. So this summer we have someone with the Oklahoma City Thunder. We had someone with the Bills, like I mentioned previously. We've sent numerous students to the Indiana Pacers, to the Detroit Pistons, to the Brooklyn Nets. We have people in baseball with the Milwaukee Brewers, with the Pittsburgh Pirates. So it does run kind of the gamut. We have some people right now that are working with some teams in MLS. So the difficult part about this summer has been, because of the pandemic, sports has been, for all intents and purposes, on hold. But yes, in internships, you'll have plenty of opportunities to be able to do that. And part of my job is to find those opportunities and put them in front of the students.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm going to have a couple of last questions here. This one I'd like to answer, well, actually now two I'd like to answer myself just very quickly. The first is Syracuse a rolling admission school? Nope. Our deadlines are January 1st for regular decision, November 15th for early decision, but those are the two dates that you apply. We review all of our apps in one big process holistically. So you don't hear back from us for traditional rolling admissions. You don't hear back from us earlier. If you submit earlier, we hit that deadline for applications, and then we begin to notify regular decisions applicants typically in March, and early decision applicants hear back from us in December prior to that January 1st deadline. The second aspect I'd like to hit on is our 2020 supplemental questions for admissions released yet. Not quite yet, but they are on the way. So keep an eye in your inboxes, keep an eye on Common App's supplemental page in the news there, and we'll be letting our prospective applicants know shortly what those questions might be, how they might change, what they're going to look like for the upcoming cycle. But you will have plenty of time to prepare for those prior to those two deadlines I just mentioned, I promise. And so finally, I want to talk just a little bit about, actually, I love that we're already thinking about this, education beyond just the 4 years you might spend in college. In fact, we have a couple questions here, mostly here for Rachel, about 3+3 programs and pursuing an MBA. So I was wondering, Rachel, if you wouldn't mind taking a few moments to just talk about looking into the 3+3 with business and law, or into business administration and other long-term programs we might have.
Yes, awesome. Thank you, Jake. So we do have an MBA program at Syracuse, both in person and a fully online MBA option. So it is absolutely possible to continue after your bachelor's degree into an MBA program. And we actually see more students going into an MBA degree who have, I'm sorry, my daughter's crying. Don't worry, she's being taken care of. I think she fell. We have more students who want to achieve their MBA who've been in another program on campus, not in business for their undergrad. So for our business students, we actually see that it's more common for them to go out and work first and gain experience before coming back to work towards their MBA. So our business degree, our undergrad business degree, generally prepares students with the knowledge and skills that they need to enter the workforce. And then after a few years, once they need additional education, come back for their MBA. We do see students in accounting majors continue on for a 5th year to achieve their master's in accounting. So it's an MS degree. That's a common pathway for students to finish the 150 credits required for CPA exams, and also achieve their master's and all of that. So if you're interested in that, please send me an email and we can talk further. For the 3+3 program, so that's an option to continue into law school. And so essentially the 3 years of undergrad, the first 3 would be an undergraduate classes, undergraduate tuition, and then the second 3 years are law school years. So it's a traditional law school path, law school tuition. And then some of the courses in that first year of law school are approved by the state to count towards your bachelor's degree. So you would earn your bachelor's degree after your 4th year or your first year of law school, although you would be essentially a first-year law student that year, and tuition would be a law school tuition. However, the only thing I'll add here is the potential cost savings for the law school years. So for students who come through this path, the law school has committed to a minimum of 50% off tuition for the second 3 years, and it could go up from there depending on how competitive your application is. So undergraduate tuition first 3, second 3 law school tuition with hopefully a significant discount.
Perfect. There's my mic taking 3 clicks again. Sorry. Thank you so much. We have just one final question for Steph, and then I have one last note I'd like to hit on before we wrap up, which, but Steph, before we move on, is if I wanted to do cybersecurity, would that be at the iSchool?
Yes, you can do that. I want to define some terms. So cybersecurity, we call that information security at the iSchool. And that's looking at the humans concerned about technology or security. For example, password 123 is not a secure password. Things like that. And we look at like security in applications. We look at the ethics of security. We look at all of that. And I think defining terms is important. Is cybersecurity often refers to hardware. So like, say like that microphone up there, is that secure? The actual physical thing, it's a more, there's definitely a more articulate way. How about element? And if you want to look at the hardware security, that's something a computer engineer, computer scientist, or even to some extent a mechanical engineer would look at. So it depends on what side of cybersecurity you're really interested in. And I will just mention too, because Rachel's talked about it, the iSchool is a fast track program where you can get any major at Syracuse University that's interested in data analytics, library science, or enterprise data systems can apply in a similar format to what Rachel described. So say you decide you want to go sports analytics or sports management and then get a master's degree in data science, you can do that as well. So yes, thank you. And I think I answered all those questions. Am I good?
You did. Thank you so much. So I'd like to just wrap up by saying I've typed my syr.edu email address into the chat for you all. We have obviously our wonderful panelists have had their contact information shared on here as well. The college search process has never been easy. This year, it has its unique set of challenges more so than any other. And we want to recognize that. We want to recognize how tough this must be for you. And in that light, everyone here, I speak for everyone here when I say that we're so happy to be resources for you, whatever that looks like. If there's anything we can do to help you make this transition and this process a little simpler or a little less stressful on yourself, please do not hesitate to contact us. We get into this line of work because we care about putting students in a position to succeed and creating opportunities for them. And that's exactly what we're here for. So don't be afraid to write. But thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us this evening and listen to some of the experts talk about their respective fields. If you need to get in touch with any of us, please feel free to email as per the contact info here. And on that note, I will go ahead and wrap things up for the evening. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.